Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This afternoon, it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Hazelkorn, a distinguished figure in the global higher education community. Ellen is joint managing partner at PH Associate Education Consultant and Professor Emeritus at Technological University, Dublin. And she's also co-editor of Policy Reviews of Higher Education. I've known Ellen for many years. How many, 25? Oh my gosh, oh. You haven't heard, no. So Ellen, I can ensure that Ellen is not only a prolific and globally respected researcher in QA, but also a deeply committed and context-aware consultant. We work together, and Ellen is not one of those consultants who simply advise and leave. She understands that quality is a sensitive, often political issue that often requires both expertise and empathy that, Ellen, you bring both in abundance. Given Ellen's extensive experience in quality assurance, transnational education, and your active role in the upcoming Intergovernmental Conference on the Global Recognition Convention to be held in Paris at the end of June, there is no better person to reflect on the connection between quality assurance and recognition. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Hazelkorn. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much. Can you hear? Yes. That's okay. Fabrice, yeah, we work together. It's not on. Okay. Hello? Okay. Right. We worked together years ago at OECD, and it's and more recently in another project. But yeah, so it's great, and thank you all very much for the invitation today. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the Global Convention. We've been talking a lot about quality assurance, but quality assurance only works in a global context. And when we talk about that, for me, no matter where one lives or works, or what part of the world and what you do, we are all part of the global talent pool in one way or another. And the issue of global recognition of qualifications and credentials, whatever type of credentials they are fundamental to that. Well, let's see if I got this now. Okay, now let's try this. Hold on. Okay, let me go back. Okay, so I got the hang of it. Okay, so I just want to start with two basic quotes. The first one is a reference that, in fact, Noah Sobey made yesterday about the UNESCO roadmap for higher education, which recognizes the importance of a more open, inclusive, collaborative higher education system and an international basis for it. The second coming from the Global Convention itself, looking again at the importance of the international recognition of qualifications of higher education, the issue around mobility of learners and learning, and including the whole gambit, if you want to say, academic, scientific research and researchers, workers and professionals in an international cooperation and an international landscape. So I'm broadly going to talk very briefly about these overall trends we've talked about that. And then I want to talk about the Global Convention, just some of it is kind of basic. What are the issues? And then actions and what we need to think about to enacting it. So when we talk about the Global Convention, who and what are we talking about? We're basically looking at all of us in the context in which higher education sits at what I call the epicenter of a changing global landscape. It is part of that global landscape. And so we have this quickening change, this pace of change that is happening, not just on the technological change, demographics, which we've talked about, affecting countries in very different ways. Japan has highlighted their issues, the green transition, but also, as we know, re-emerging different patterns of geopolitics and geoeconomics, all of which are having a transformative effect on higher education, and if I could say, on the tertiary system itself. We're looking at more and more providers and a huge diversity of learners. And it's the diversity of learners and learning that is also fundamental. So we have new types of designs, new types of programs, new types of qualifications, different approaches for it, different ways we look about that. My saying is that all learners are lifelong learners. I've heard very little conversation over the last days about anything about adults. Hear us about adults, skilling, reskilling. I've heard no referencing to that. We still talk about students. I prefer learners. Students think we're talking only about 18-year-olds. No, we're talking about 40 and 50-year-olds as well. We're talking about me, who's older than that. We're talking about the changes in technology, the shift to online. Ultimately, more and more education will be online. The customization of learning that is also going to be a benefit or an outcome of AI, and the growth of T&E. And we are looking at the massive change in the higher education system and the tertiary system in terms of not just the numbers of people involved, the number of institutions involved, the types of institutions, and the private sector growing really quite large. And just talking earlier to Susanna, the numbers around this are really quite difficult to come up with accuracy. But we are all part of this global talent pool. And let us not forget the global geography of science, the importance of it, the importance of networks, the important feature of the interconnections. And let us not forget that the importance at a time in which multilateralism is under attack and research collaboration is under attack, the importance of international collaboration around research. We would not have reached a vaccine for COVID had it not been for that. So education sits at the center of all these factors, of all these areas, of all these ministries. There's not one that can operate. And as UNESCO has said, education is both a goal in itself with SDG 4, as well as an integral part of an enabler for achieving all the other SDGs. So quality assurance matters. And quality, not only access to, but access to quality education matters. So what is the Global Convention and what is it about? So assuring quality is a concern worldwide, and it's a concern for everyone. It's a key driver impacting on and affecting both higher education, individuals, and nations. The whole issue around performance, around knowledge, about talent producing capacities of our institutions, of our systems, is a key differentiator nationally and globally. High-level quality is the key factor. Lots of people, lots of providers, but are they providing quality? And so we'll come back to that issue about learners and learner protection. So it is what provides confidence to society, to prospective learners. It informs us about choices, recognition of qualifications, a beacon to attract and retain investment, mobile investment, business and talent to our countries, And it's about national positioning and pride. And there's no government that doesn't feel pride in its institutions when they're doing well. And there is increasingly, in my view, a necessity to regulate this expanding global educational landscape and to protect against fraud. So the Global Convention was adopted by UNESCO in 2019. It's the Global Convention on the Recognition of Qualifications Concerning Higher Education. It is the first UN treaty, as I say, with a global scope. It has been ratified up to this point by only 38 countries, though many more have ratified it through their regional networks. And it is to commit countries to strengthening international cooperation in higher education, raising its quality at home and worldwide, helping to make academic mobility and recognition of qualifications a reality. So that is that we've got a harmonization internationally. So what are the key objectives? These are just some. So it seeks to establish the principles of fair, transparent, and non-discriminatory recognition of qualifications, of higher education qualifications, and qualifications that give access to higher education wherever they are, crossing borders or at home. It facilitates the recognition of qualifications, prior learning, which is increasingly important, and study periods earned remotely. It promotes the recognition of refugees' qualifications, a key element, a key factor in a world in which many people are moving around, some on their own desire, many more not, even in cases where documentary evidence is lacking. And it facilitates all learners in learning, and as I said, academics, scientific research and researchers, workers and professionals, and that includes whether you've got a vocational qualification or an undergraduate or a doctoral qualification or a professional qualification, and we need to accept that breadth of qualifications. Achieving these objectives requires fundamentally, in my view, the issue of trust and confidence in the quality of that qualification and in the system that provides it. And that ultimately is part of the key issue here, is that the quality and trust is based on benchmark common principles and practices. So that the recognition is, as I said, regardless of where the education program and the learning is undertaken, on the basis that there's no difference between that which is, if someone is taking a program that is based in one country or comes from an institution in one country, but is taking that program in another country, whether you are in the home or in the host. That it supports quality regardless of whether it's in a formal, non-formal, or informal setting, whether it's for partial or partial studies or prior learning, whether it's face-to-face, virtual, or hybrid, whether it's traditional or non-traditional modes. And these other kinds of modes are going to become increasingly more important and more significant in number. It looks at greater harmonization across borders. It aims to co-create a more open, inclusive, and equitable and collaborative system. But there are huge, huge challenges. Not least, there's no internationally agreed definition of quality. Now, people like rankings might decide that they've got the answer, but there is no single answer. And we know that because we've got diversity of institutions, diversity of contexts, but the issue of equivalence comes in. How do we harmonize and look at these different things? But there's no international definition, nor do we have a common definition of common data definitions, how do we collect it, what's meaningful, and so on, or how it should be assessed, much less improved. And hence, we've got different approaches, different methodologies, different choice of indicators, and so on. Many states don't have appropriate systems, don't have an appropriate legislation in place, don't have other kinds of ways in which the quality of the institutions or indeed programs are recognized. Nor in some cases is it a mandatory system. Some people think, oh, well, this is just voluntary. For me, it can't be voluntary. Nor do we have and agree the necessary QA frameworks and systems in place internationally to assure or to ensure quality and standards in T&E. And as we heard during the discussions, there are many and increasing variety of forms of T&E. It's not just cross-border, it's not just campuses overseas, it's other forms, joint programs, joint assessments, and probably in this area, as we move into online and online T&E, we are in the areas of the most open to areas of fraud. We have differences in capacity and capabilities to monitor. For example, the recent discussion we just had here in the last session about not just technologies in general, but AI in particular. We have differences in our ability to assess and monitor issues around ethics, academic integrity, plagiarism, privacy, confidentiality, bias, and so on. We have most of our learners, and indeed our governments, and indeed the public at large, have very poor understanding of what constitutes a quality education, don't understand issues of accreditation, don't understand how they get that information. It's generally not available. It's often hidden in varying places. So very little public information about accredited institutions and programs, what that process is, leaving institutions and individuals victims to the vagaries of the global marketplace. And we're facing an existential challenge to the principles of multilateralism and the Global Convention. So actions to think about. And I'm going to go through this in terms of different sectors or actors, policy actors. So for institutions, of which there are some, there are many more. I've only fit 3 or 4 on a slide. I've got a list of actions, but we'll stick with these. So if you're an institution, what's your internal quality assurance, your IQA process like? Do you have the proper tools set up? Are you introducing and periodically reviewing your programs, updating them, ensuring that they're rigorous and implemented appropriately, and that they align with international best practice? What about recognition of students, of learners seeking to enroll or apply to your institution? Do you have a process by which you are recognizing their prior learning, their applications, their credits that they've acquired elsewhere? Does that include automatic or reciprocal recognition for, as I said, prior learning, partial studies, credit transfer? Or with all due respect to my colleague academics, is this something, no, you haven't read my book and therefore we won't take you in. You haven't done the right business course, you've done something else, we won't take you in. So issues around credit, recognition, and so on are vitally important, and what is your institution doing about it? And is the information about your QA system, about your accredited programs, Is that available publicly online? Do you have a space on your website that has all your reports up to date, that people can read that, a learner can access it and understand this program that I'm now going to enroll on has been accredited? So what about for the QA agencies? Many of you are here. Have you updated your policies about EQA? And also your guidelines for internal quality assurance? Does this include part-time higher education or private higher education? Does it include T&E? If it doesn't, you should. You need guidelines around T&E. And you need guidelines that reflect and cover both the public and the private system, and to ensure that they are rigorously implemented and periodically reviewed and updated. Are you providing capacity building, training, not just for your staff, but for the institutions, for your learners, and other stakeholders who are also on your panels and are on your review panels? Are they informed about QA in general? Do they understand it? Do they understand the importance of it? What are these international trends? How is it? And so on. And again, the last session, what about AI and the technology and the use of it, and how all these other products are used? Have they been vetted? Are they risky? And so on. What kind of guidelines have you provided for your community? These are all essentials for every agency to provide. And what about for learners? They are a co-partner in the process. They have basic rights as learners, as consumers of education, regardless of where they're studying, whatever format they're studying in. They are an essential partner in the QA process. That means they should be a member of the panels, of the review panels. That means that they should be part and parcel to helping devise and revise the QA policies and procedures. And as I said, to participate on review panels. And have you provided capacity training for them? Or are they there just as a kind of some other person just sitting there on the panel who you don't really involve in the process? They're just there in name only. And indeed, quite frankly, really this should read action for stakeholders, because your stakeholders increasingly include your learners, but they may include employers, civic communities, and others who should be part and parcel of your QA process. So what about your regional networks, of which you're all members of? Do you have a regional qualifications framework? Have you harmonized across that region? So moving from one country to the next, that mobility within your region, whether it's the Asian region, Latin America, Africa, and so on, have you mapped alignment? An area potentially where AI might be able to help in terms of looking at alignment between the different systems, coming to some common equivalence across them, making that easy for mobility within the region. Do you have QA guidelines, and are you information sharing? Ensuring that your networks work as a place in which you are sharing information about QA, about the guidelines, documentation, recognition, T&E, and fraud. I had the good opportunity to attend virtually. It started at 5 o'clock in the morning for me, the ASEAN Regional Network Conference last December. And is the information easily available? How are you actively providing that information and promoting and publishing information? Again, online, open, publicly accessible, and so on. And not to leave the government out, because they're key. They're the key policy driver, the key policy makers. Essential to have a national qualifications framework, an NQF. Without that, it's not really possible to start looking at qualifications and aligning your qualifications across it. So an essential piece of the infrastructure. Vital for me is a national register of accredited institutions and accredited programs that the government should have in each country, publicly available. What has been accredited, which institutions, and which programs, so that everyone can see what exactly is available, providing trust and reassurance to people that the program that they're seeking to enroll on, or which they graduated from, or they're seeking to employ someone from, is legitimate. Recognition of foreign accreditation and our QA agencies. Automatic recognition, transfer, mutual recognition. And fundamentally, learner protection. How many of your countries have legislation, rigid learner protection? What happens in cases where the institution fails? It collapses. It's not financially sustainable. The student, the learner, has paid for the program or achieved 2 years of it. What happens? Do you just say goodbye? That learner deserves to have actual protection, a fund to protect them, a process, a pathway to move to another program. So learner protection is vital at a national level. And finally, in Quahi, not to escape members here, an international framework of agreed principles and standards for quality and quality assurance, an important benchmark internationally, and working with UNESCO and other global stakeholders to achieve a global framework of what are we talking about when we look at this. And for me, most important, again, getting to this issue around recognition, but also fraud, is the issue of an international register of accredited quality assurance agencies. All you need to do is to go onto Wikipedia and look at fraudulent agencies. All you have to do, it's very easy. It's and many countries don't have the regulations in place and leave it to institutions to choose. It's what I call shopping for accreditation. And in that, as you know, all consumers are often taken to the cleaners, would be the expression where I come from. And so the issue of an international register is vital. ECAR, which exists in the EU, EH, and the European higher education area, is an example of what should be made international. And so the information from that should be fed into the WED, which is run by the, overseen by the IAU, the International Association of Universities. So what can you do to push this agenda? Importantly, you can disseminate information and knowledge about the Global Convention. You can push it in your countries, and you can become a signatory. 38 out of the hundreds of countries in the world is very small. And this is, it's something for your learners. that they graduate from whatever program they are, and we're all mobile and are recognized elsewhere. So facing the challenge head on, the gaps that we have in our systems, the lack of joined up thinking, the lack of joined up systems, the lack of joined up policies leaves learners, employers, states, and the public victim to the vagaries of the global marketplace. The kinds of challenges and perceived weakening of international collaboration and accreditation, the time in which we are leading is leading potentially to a fragmentation and multilateralism, and multilateralism is being challenged. And we need to stand up to that. The Global Convention has made very important strides, but comprehensive systemic change is required. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. It's really wonderful to hear all this. Now we have some time for questions and comments again. Please feel free. Yeah, we have one colleague there. Microphones. Yeah, coming.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity for me. Prof. Ellen, thanks for your enlightening presentation, but I have a concern on your challenge, the slide of challenge number 1. Can we go to that slide, please? Mm-hmm. Challenge number 1, yeah. The number 1 there, no agreed international definition of quality. Do you think it is good or bad to not having an international definition? Why? Because in a country such as Indonesia, we have more than 4,000 higher education institutions, both private and government. Quality might be better to define by their own. Its own university may have its own definition on quality. So the accreditation based on their definition. That is my thinking, and I think this Indonesia we adopt that view.
You know, I'm not saying that there's a single definition of quality.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Goes back to you.
Maybe that could be chaotic, though. We have to be cautious on this comment, you know. It could be chaotic otherwise. If everyone wants to do within their understanding of quality, do you think it's a little bit risky, isn't it? But I was thinking when Ellen said that, it's good that what we are doing as QA agencies, although we don't have a common definition of quality assurance, it seems that we are really doing good, you know, without having a common understanding on the definition. So that's important, but leaving definition to individual institutions, I think it's a little bit question mark. Maybe we need further discussion in other sessions and conferences.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you for the contribution. Food for thought. Any other question, please, or comments? Oh, yes. I'll show you.
One of the challenges which every country, every educational institution is facing today is about retraction of research publications. The numbers are increasing year after year because of whatever policies in the government for promotions, for higher going up. People are doing a lot of cheating, and that is creating a big issue worldwide. I think we must act on it and say that this will not be tolerated. Plagiarism is one part. This is also part of plagiarism, but retraction because of variety of reasons which is happening is not a good sign for the research.
Thank you.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, there's a huge debate about the value of just publications and citation counts, a huge debate about their value. Lots of publications coming out, question of, I mean, editor of a journal, I mean, for years, you know, it's a question, the problem is people pick easy indicators. They've been promoted by, if I could say, not just the rankings, but other kinds of sources. It's an easy thing to count. Are they meaningful? There's some meaning in it, but it's not the be-all and end-all in it. I also, straight up, I'm going to also throw some of it back on the universities, many of whom require for their doctoral students that they have published articles already before they will get a doctorate. Where's the responsibility for doctoral students? Offloading it onto journals. No, so it is a huge debate. I agree with you entirely. And it is part and parcel of the issue that we don't have a common approach towards looking at quality, how we assess it, how we measure it. There's no agreement about meaningful indicators. Whether it's possible to get there is a different issue, but we also don't have a database. We don't own the data. We've given it away. I'd be looking for, looking at UNESCO or some other organization to start putting together an international repository of higher education data with a governance system that is publicly responsible.
Thank you. I think IAU did great in that respect, isn't it? Having this observatory at least. Thank you. I think Iring would like to, yes, go ahead, please.
Thanks very much for the presentation, and you can sense that there's some hard blood for this issue. I think we are in a good way. I'm placing, as I mentioned already, a great hope for establishing the INQAHE database of a whitelist of accredited institutions which are in line with the ESG. I place a lot of hope on establishing the register of accredited institutions and programs, which will, in a way, have a subsequent effect the other way around. Because then I think UNESCO and the states will, in a way, see that this is like the decisive mosaic in the whole setup. I recommend to think what is being done in Europe to, in a way, also enlarge this register and think about also like adding the lifelong learning micro-credentials parts to the register. And when it comes to consumer protection, my additional idea, which I know is difficult to implement, my own agency, we are accrediting in 70 countries. And I frequently, when we have a negative decision, two things happen. Number one, the university will not pay the fees when it actually is expecting a negative decision. And the next thing they will do, they will go to the next agency in a way to ask for an accreditation. So I know it's legally difficult, but one might for one moment think that there's a role for INQAHE, not only to have the whitelist of agencies, institutions, programs, micro-credentials, but even a blacklist where agencies, which in a way have a difficult experience with a program failing its students, that there might be some sort of like a central place within INQAHE where you can in a way notify of such an incident, so that there's really, so to speak, one central authority under the umbrella of INQAHE in charge. But once we have this, and I really encourage UNESCO and INQAHE to push forward on that, once we have this central element, I'm very positive that politically speaking, a lot of the things you're mentioning are not then actually catching up speed. So that's my summary.
Thank you, Iring. Any comment?
I mean, my comment is that governments have a big role in this at a national level.
Thank you.
To pursue that. And learner protection is something that certainly should be introduced at the national level.
And as far as INQAHE is concerned, I'm sure our president will remark on the closing session, because we have some thoughts and some works towards that as well. That's needed, is for sure. like the ECAR case, as you clearly mentioned. Hopefully we'll get there all together. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Oh, we have some on this side, please.
Thank you so much. Mine is a question. I want to mention that in this world that is now faced with a rising number of conflicts, we have so many of our displaced people out there that are finding themselves through circumstances of wars in our countries as refugees this time around. I come from Zambia, and Zambia is happening to be a host of quite a number of refugees. And these are people that come to our countries because of the circumstances in which they leave their countries. They come without any documents to support their previous education. Quite recent, there's an emergence of what is called the European Qualification Passport. And UNESCO is actually bringing the concept into Zambia, which is called the UQP, the UNESCO Qualification Passport. I want to find out from you, what are these concepts? What are these two concepts? And back home, our fears are on the compromise to quality of education. If we had to go with the proposed ideas of adopting the UNESCO Qualification Passport, do you think it has any impact in terms of quality of education if we had to implement the UNESCO Qualification Passport, which is much similar to the European Qualification Passport? Also, that this is coming at the face of rising tensions, rising conflicts around the world. Is this concept just a good concept that we should all adopt? And what do you say when it comes to quality of education in the face of these two concepts?
Thank you very
so
much.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I just make a general comment back on it without going into the specifics, is that it is about trying to recognize on the point that you've made about the number of people who are mobile and are refugees and have left their homes and don't have the paperwork, is that we do need to have processes in place to recognize qualifications and credentials and experience, whether that's recognition of prior learning, of which there are established processes. Different institutions do it different ways, but certainly at national levels to begin to look at how we recognize qualifications. This is the whole point of the global convention, is to introduce and ensure that we've got a system. It isn't about having exacted, it's about equivalence, about harmonization, it's about equivalence to the national qualifications frameworks within countries and so on. And so that is an important principle.
Yeah. And also, as far as I know, they approach the national authorities, the QA agencies and higher education councils to coordinate all these issues, UNESCO, I mean. Thank you. Okay, maybe one more question and then we need to wrap up. Scott, I'll give the last question to you, if it's okay.
Be very quick. Thank you, Ellen, for a comprehensive, Scott Blair from Solitas Impact. Thank you, Ellen, for a comprehensive presentation of all the work ahead of us. Because we haven't yet defined what a quality education is, would you consider that building a socially just and environmentally sustainable world should be included in that definition of what type of education future generations should receive? Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to go down the definition now, but certainly we're looking at learning outcomes. We're also looking at the quality of the learning environment, the quality of the learning experience. And those wider sets of issues need to be in it. How we define it depending on which programs and types of programs people are doing, the values in it, whether it's to the extent of balance between knowledge, skills, and the values and so on. Those need to be worked out, and some of them are very context-based. That's why there's no single, but they're broad objectives as to what makes a quality education. Is absolutely, we do need to come to some agreement on what that means. It doesn't mean that we're counting indicators. I want to move us away from that idea. We're not counting indicators when we come up with a general sense of what we're talking about.
Thank you. I think this is really a long discussion to go, but after all this, what I just thought that I was saying we are all in the same boat to the same target, but I think we are with this same target, we have different boats with different engines, as it was called earlier, Ferrari with a fuel. So we have to find out what's the definition of quality and what is the size and the power of our boat. So we need to really exchange and explore to go to the target altogether. Thank you very much, Ellen, really for this. Yeah, please do that.
Sorry. I think it's important also in a context in which we have, and indeed we should have, widely diverse types of institutions. The major problem that we have faced over the last 20 years is becoming victims to rankings with a single definition of what is excellence. That's not what we're about. We have different types of institutions, different learners with different objectives, different needs, and we have different contexts, and we need to recognize that, and going forward.
Wonderful closing remarks. Thank you. Now, Fabrice, please, let's give. Thank you very much. Just 1 second.
No. So, yes, Ellen, to thank you for your contribution. Thank you very much. We have a gift for you. And please, thank you. And there will be probably the photographer who should be at the center. First at 2. I know now. For 10 more years now, I think.
Yeah. Well, I've been trying to, I think they're interested.
Yes. No, I know. So, next time there is a dialogue, so